Steve Laffey, I know we have a little mix up there. I kept it last week and I didn't move it to this week. I appreciate you, my friend. Sorry about that.
No problem. I go on anytime. I just was sitting here going to call in at 7:30, and let's see what happens at 7:19. But let's go.
My phone out of here in the studio. I've received 28 texts this morning from people wanting to talk to me during the show. And they all pop up on my computer screen, and I can't figure out how to make that stop either. So I got to figure out 28 texts is what I'm up to this morning. I got to ask the engineer, Delilah, how do I get rid of these on my computer screen? They stop my whole computer when they do that. All right, Steve, let's dive in this Hunter Biden story. It's a serious issue, but is it gonna matter for the election?
It won't matter for the election. I liken it to Watergate. Watergate had happened. There was some news before the election. People denied everything. The thing about the Biden family will be massive corruption and will force his resignation if he becomes president. He would do himself a great service if he called a press conference today, answered every question truthfully, and then just moved on. But I doubt that will happen. But it will be a gigantic story for next year. But 24 million people have voted. It'll be, it won't get the credit it deserves in tomorrow night's debate, even though the president will try.
Yeah. Steve, I'm watching the clock, by the way. It's 7:19. You and I are going to have a moment of silence and see what happens. You not know what that means. That's radio talk. And I appreciate you being patient here with us. Yeah, the Watergate comparison is quite interesting. But this would be a pre-election story if the last name were Hunter Trump, and not Hunter Biden.
Well, Jimmy, that is a great point. If indeed there were any problems with Trump's children, and you remember in 2015 when I said to people and on your show that Trump's biggest asset, not just China, which he talked about to win the election, not to do anything about it, but was his children. They loved him. They seemed to be normal. They didn't have the Billy Beer problem. We could go through a litany of other presidents' children and so forth and relatives. And they seemed to be handsome. And even his ex-wife was with him. So that was a huge asset. And unfortunately for Joe Biden, he let things go off the rail with his son Hunter, and it eventually will bring him down no matter what. But if it was a Republican doing this right now, it would cost him the election.
Yep. Steve Laffey is my guest. Steve, we're 5 minutes away from that moment in time that we're waiting to check on. Just giving you a time check. We're still good so far. Test 1, 2, 3. You sent me a story. Speaking of nobody going to jail, your laptop. I mean, it's not just the sexual allegations that are on this laptop. I mean, it is people beholden to China. It's payoffs to Russia, Uzbekistan. I mean, all these countries is all documented on this laptop. And we've seen this before. Powerful politicians and connected people don't get in trouble and they don't go to jail. You sent me a story here that Goldman Sachs is going to settle a federal probe by paying $2.8 billion and just say we were very bad boys. And you sent me that story in the headline, and then you said, and again, nobody goes to jail. It seems that's the way of America. The rich, the powerful, the connected, they don't have to pay the price that you or I would have to pay.
And this is the seminal story. If I were to run for president, Jimmy, I would talk about political corruption as the number one thing, and corruption in America, the corruption of the PPP program, which now I have spoken to like 12 quote-unquote friends who took the money, 11 did not need it. And now they're all looking for forgiveness, and they just basically people will pocket the money. And I say don't need it. I don't think anybody should have ever done the PPP program. But to Goldman Sachs, and specifically, they had a giant problem in bribery, in the Malaysian bribery scandal. It's going on for years. And I have the latest article here in front of me. But this is just the Justice Department is going to make them pay $2.8 billion, which to Goldman Sachs is nothing. And no one goes to jail for bribery. Now, we could go on all day because you and I have talked about this, but for 5 years, from 2009 to 2014 or so, JP Morgan, the largest bank in America, which got larger because of what happened in 08-09, the fascism of 08 and 09 made the giant banks larger, took away all the interest payments to individuals because of the Fed, and kept the money for rich individuals in the stock market to make inequality of wealth even bigger. No Republican will talk about this to end the Fed as it does it. But Goldman Sachs paid out a third of its pre-tax income, billions and billions of dollars nearly every year, under supposedly a legendary CEO in Jamie Dimon. They paid it out in fines for massive violations of federal law. And to this very day, I can't find the J.P. Morgan person who went to jail. I could go on all day. Take a look at Ernst & Young. Everybody remembers them as one of the big seven, now the big four, because there's only four accounting firms. They're the people who are doing the WeWorks auditing. They did the auditing for Wirecard that just went broke over fraud. They can't even find one of the people. They did China's Luckin Coffee. So nobody at Ernst & Young seems to want to go to jail, Jimmy, but they have done faulty auditing for years on many of the biggest firms, and they will not go to jail. We need these people to go to jail when they violate white-collar laws.
Steve Laffey, we're about 90 seconds away from the time, so hold tight. We'll see what happens here. We'll see what happens. For the last several weeks, if you're new to the program, around 7:18 or 7:19, mysteriously, the gods of the telephones have disconnected Steve every week at the same time, and then we had another guest at the same moment last week, and they disconnected at this time. It only happens on Wednesday. And that's why, Steve, we'll probably, if we need to, we'll move to 7:30 in the future. But nevertheless, Steve, I'm just letting you know we're about 60 seconds away. So hold your breath, and let's see how this goes. You have sent me another story. This is not being talked about in the election as well. And maybe you and I are the only ones that ever talked about it. The deficit tripled last fiscal year in the budget, and it's in small print in the newspaper.
Yes, and Jimmy, if the president loses, it will be over. No one will talk about this. It'll be over fiscal conservatives who couldn't take it any longer. I have I don't know, 10 pretty close friends from Harvard Business School, and none of them are voting for President Trump. Just so you know. By the way, all are conservative. My friends from Harvard Business School, there are some liberals. I don't really hang around them. A couple of them I do, actually. I'm joking, but really none of them are voting for President Trump. It's over this issue. Most of my friends who do business like balance budgets, like they're really serious people about this. They want things to be done correctly. This blowout past the $25 trillion in debt, which is sort of the figure that we use in the movie, minus the how we borrow, into the government, really puts the country at a point of no return. And we, the financial experts of the world, this is what I do, right? People think this is what I do. We know there's now no point of return, Jimmy. And this is a giant problem. It won't even be part of the debate tomorrow night, but it's a giant problem. Are we there? I didn't lose you. Oh, we did. Okay. I'm just waiting. It's 7:19. So, all right. Well, that was the test. But that is the giant problem of America that's not on the front page. The article I sent you again from last week is on page A2. It's a couple of paragraphs. I'm not saying it doesn't appear on the front page, but it needs to be when there's a debate tomorrow night. Why won't that be the first question? How are you going to balance the budget? I've said this to you in the 2016 election. I said to anybody who would listen in 2012. People who were asked to bring in a notepad and balance the budget, Ted Cruz to Joe Biden, name anybody, Kamala Harris, they would fall off the back of the chair, have a heart attack. There'd be nobody left standing. Me and Mark Sanford out of South Carolina could be left standing.
That's Steve Laffey, the voice of reason in the world of insanity. We made it through our witching hour, so it looked like we're on the home stretch, Steve. By the way, his website is stevelaffey.com. He has a movie available. You can Fixing America, the movie. Is also book Primary Mistakes available out there. Steve, that brings up a great point. It's a debate tomorrow night, and nobody's talking about the deficit. However, for the third presidential debate and even on the vice presidential debate, these stinking moderators have decided that global warming and climate change must be an entire section of the debate. I don't know where you live, Steve, or I do know where you live, but I don't know who you're hanging out with every day, but nobody that I talk to gives a rat's rear end about an entire segment in 4 different debates on climate change and global warming, but they're not going to talk about the deficit, but they're going to make sure they cover climate change tomorrow night, Steve.
And that's why whoever does these debates, the impartial, whatever, they're not. Why do Republicans keep falling? You've talked about the guy who was supposed to moderate the last one, but didn't have it and worked for Biden. I mean, this happens every single time. The truth is that President Trump is right about the land management when it comes to these fires. I walked through northern Breckenridge in September and saw all the wood lying on between Frisco and Breckenridge. It's all going to burn to the ground one day. Just burn to the ground. You just have to take a walk on the hike on the path that goes to the number two, where they ski, and you'll see it. I saw it. My son saw it. We were just horrified. But there is no. I just want to be. There is no global warming to worry about. There are more trees. No one will talk about why would hopefully the president tomorrow night has his talking points together. I'm praying for his sake that he has like done some prep work where he can say and pull out a graph, pull it out of his pocket. Hey, America, we've reduced emissions by 40%. What's China doing? When he gets you back into those Paris Accords because of this faulty climate stuff. By the way, the president's much older than me. He can remember when he was told there would be no more oil. Right? He can remember the Club for Rome people. They're still alive. The guys at MIT, the Lester Thoreau people, they were all wrong. They wanted to destroy America then. And now that looks like they're getting their chance finally. That's what he has to talk about. Show what China does every week with a new coal-fired power plant. That'll be a winner with American people. Look into the camera. Speak to the people in western Pennsylvania about fracking, right? I mean, listen, there's major mistakes he made, but this is like the last chance he gets before there might be a total wipeout. And he better do a good job tomorrow night, Jimmy.
Yeah, let's hope he does. And again, I hope he's disciplined enough to take that talking point when they want to bring up climate change and the Paris Accords. Again, pull it out of your pocket. Don't interrupt Joe Biden the entire time and just step by step, precept upon precept, lay out your case. Steve Laffey, your website is out there. We made it through an entire segment. I apologize for the mix-up early on. But maybe we have fixed the problem that was so bothering us here the last couple of weeks.
God bless you, Jimmy. And yes, I would just say a quick prayer for tomorrow night. I appreciate it. I'll be on whenever you need me. We'll talk soon.
We'll make sure we have that permanent set again. I appreciate you. SteveLaffey.com is his web.
So if you weren't paying attention, I mean, no one has to pay attention to that part, but Jimmy's such a great guy. I was supposed to come out at 7:30, but he forgot and went back and forth on it because the machine didn't work. Before I get off here, I do want to say I've said this, many times. By the way, you see the new photo, the photo of the painting. This is my original painting from David Ma. I was just thinking I have them all over throughout the house, but I didn't have that one behind me. I had the other one from Liz Todd, like the only other one I kind of own, other than like 12 or a dozen David Ma paintings. That's really still my favorite. The first one's always your favorite. I'm not much of an artist. I don't like art. I don't say I don't like art, but I've never been moved by art, except I was standing around one day at a friend Min Brown's house, and I was like, this is the greatest painting of all time. I don't know why I was moved, and there was a local painter who lived in Florida, and he actually came by my house, and I bought it out of his car back in 1994 in July. So I figured I'd put it up there for people who can see. It's a wonderful, wonderful Southern painting, which I love, and I miss deeply the South in many ways because I love the people down there. But if we don't get our act together on the real important things of our day, and I talk about them all the time, but they will not be spoken about tomorrow night. In fact, I would lay down money that there is no serious discussion of the Federal Reserve, which would be the seminal issue along with China to speak about. The Federal Reserve's balance sheet is now over $8 trillion. And all the Republicans voted on that kind of stuff back in March to increase it and double the Federal Reserve's balance sheet. So we are clearly beyond the point of return. And it doesn't matter who the president is, I guess. I guess it matters who's in the Senate, because at least there are some senators who know that they've totally screwed up and maybe cost themselves their career from the votes they had in March and April to send this PPP money, which is a fraudulent disaster. Again, enriching well-off people. And if you're listening here and you owned a pizza shop or you have a regular job, you didn't get any of this. And you weren't eligible for it. Large corporations were. People who were doing fine were. Sure, were there some people whose revenue was declining and it helped them and so forth. But the big article today about the PPP program, the fraudulent program, the big article about today is about how to get forgiveness. So people who got this stuff, doctors, lawyers, people I know, wonderful people in many respects, they didn't need it, and now they're going to get it forgiven, and so they're basically pocketing all the money. billions and billions of dollars. The other corruption about this, which is all corruption, which is why society is really breaking down here. It's all about the corruption that you rightfully don't believe anything you're hearing or seeing when you hear stuff like I just said. And why should you? Why should you pay any attention at all or believe anything from the left or the right? Jimmy had on a guy who, before I came on, you didn't hear it unless you listened to the radio. He announced he's a Republican shill, and he announced, a guy who used to run Yum Brands or something like that, probably a wonderful guy also, but he announced that the economy's doing great. It's going to be up 30-some-odd%. The numbers won't come out till October, and we're in this great recovery. Well, they are going to report up 30% roughly for the quarter, but they do this on an annualized basis. The economy's still down, and it's sucking wind. And it's because governors were allowed to violate all kinds of constitutional rights of you, and you, the people, obeyed them. And here we are. China's moving along after giving us the virus. People refuse to call it the Chinese virus. I don't. I call it the Chinese. We call it the CCP, Communist China Party virus. And they have not been punished. Another thing the president totally misses, and if he loses, it's over that. People who, like me, know that China, we shouldn't trade with them at all, especially after what happened. I've been saying it for 15 years. And yet we are. The president's done nothing about it effectively except for some tariffs. I just talked to a guy in Illinois who has a manufacturing firm yesterday, big manufacturing firm. I was on the phone with the customer service department, had a long conversation with a guy named Dave. They're not, we need to not trade with these people and make these jobs come back to America. We haven't done that. You know, the shirt you see me wearing right now is made in America. Todd Shelton. I know it's more expensive. It lasts longer. It's the best made shirt I've ever had in my life. His company's better than Gitman Brothers. They make them specially made for me. I only buy them when I'm on sale. Why is nobody doing this? It still befuddles me that if you want your children, and if you don't have children, nieces, to live in a strong, free America, you're going to have to buy stuff made in America. That's the end. You're going to have to do it. If you don't do it, we won't one day. Anyway, goodbye.